Ezekiel and the Valley of Dry Bones, a prophetic vision of restoration. In the midst of a land far from his beloved Jerusalem, a land marked by the grandeur of the Euphrates River and the splendor of Babylon, there lived a man named Ezekiel. He was not an ordinary man but a prophet, a messenger of the God of Israel. Ezekiel's life was about to be forever altered, for he was chosen to experience a divine encounter that would not only shape his destiny but also convey a profound message of hope to a people in the depths of despair. The prophet in a foreign land. Ezekiel was a priest by birth, a descendant of the line of Aaron. His life, like that of many of his fellow countrymen, had been upended by the cataclysmic events that had befallen Jerusalem, the city of David, the city of the temple, and the city of God. In 587 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian forces laid siege to Jerusalem, and the once mighty city fell. The temple was razed to the ground, and its sacred vessels plundered. Many, including Ezekiel, were forcibly deported to Babylon, marking the beginning of the Babylonian exile. It was in this foreign land, by the banks of the Kibar River, that Ezekiel's prophetic journey commenced. It was here, amidst the exiled community, that he would have his extraordinary encounters with the divine. The vision of God's glory. One fateful day, as Ezekiel sat by the river's edge, the heavens opened before him. What he saw defied earthly description: a whirlwind, a cloud, and fire that flashed like lightning. Amidst this celestial display, Ezekiel beheld 4 living creatures, each with a likeness resembling that of a man but adorned with wings and multiple faces. These mysterious beings, identified as cherubim, accompanied the arrival of the glory of God, a sight that rendered Ezekiel prostrate in awe. The very throne of God was before him, and upon it sat a figure with an appearance that radiated with an indescribable light. This figure, the God of Israel, extended a divine commission to Ezekiel. He was to be a prophet, a watchman, to the rebellious house of Israel. A scroll of lamentations. Ezekiel's prophetic calling was far from ordinary. He was called not only to deliver God's messages but also to embody them. In one of his early visions, God presented Ezekiel with a scroll filled with lamentations, mourning, and woe. The scroll was a symbol of the message of judgment that he would proclaim to the exiled Israelites. But God's instructions went further. Ezekiel was to eat the scroll, a symbolic act signifying that he was to internalize and assimilate the weight of God's message. The scroll's taste was sweet as honey in his mouth, but it carried a bitter weight. It was a reminder that the prophetic calling often involved both the joy of obedience and the pain of delivering difficult messages. Symbolic actions and prophecies. Ezekiel's prophetic ministry was characterized by a series of symbolic actions and prophecies that conveyed God's intentions to the exiled Israelites. These actions were performed with profound gravity and carried potent messages. One such symbolic act involved Ezekiel lying on his side for a total of 430 days, representing the years of iniquity and judgment for both the house of Israel and Judah. During this time, he also endured personal hardship, symbolizing the severity of the coming judgment. The siege of Jerusalem. Ezekiel's prophetic actions and messages often foreshadowed the impending siege and destruction of Jerusalem. He portrayed the siege through dramatic symbolism, such as lying on his left side for 390 days and on his right side for 40 days, symbolizing the iniquity and punishment of the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. In a particularly poignant vision, Ezekiel witnessed the departure of God's glory from the Jerusalem temple. This departure symbolized God's withdrawal from his people due to their persistent rebellion. It marked a profound turning point in the spiritual and political history of Israel. A vision of hope amid desolation. It was within this context of divine judgment and spiritual desolation that Ezekiel received the vision that would become one of the most iconic passages in the Bible. The vision of the Valley of Dry Bones, found in Ezekiel chapter 37 verse 114. In this vision, Ezekiel found himself in a valley filled with an immense number of dry and lifeless bones. These bones represented the exiled Israelites, spiritually dead, dispirited, and seemingly beyond hope. God posed a profound question to Ezekiel: "Son of man, can these bones live?" Ezekiel, ever obedient to God's directives, responded humbly, "O Lord God, you know." He recognized that only God possessed the power to breathe life into the lifeless. The resurrection of the dry bones. As Ezekiel prophesied, a remarkable transformation began to take place before his eyes. The bones came together, bone to bone, sinews and flesh covered them, and skin adorned them. However, there was no breath in them, no life. God then commanded Ezekiel to prophesy to the four winds, calling upon the breath to come from the four corners of the earth and breathe life into these reassembled bodies. Ezekiel obeyed, and the breath entered the lifeless bodies, and they stood on their feet, a vast army. This awe-inspiring vision held profound significance. It symbolized the restoration and resurrection of the exiled Israelites, a people who had lost hope, identity, and purpose. Just as the dry bones came back to life through the breath of God, so too would the people of Israel experience a spiritual revival and renewal, brought about by the Spirit of the Lord. The interpretation of the vision. God provided Ezekiel with the interpretation of the vision. The dry bones represented the whole house of Israel, who said, "Our bones are dried up, and our hope is lost. We are indeed cut off." The people believed that they were as good as dead, both spiritually and nationally, as they languished in exile. However, God declared that He would open their graves and bring them back to the land of Israel. He would put His Spirit within them, and they would live. This restoration was not only physical but spiritual, a reawakening of their faith and relationship with God. The hope of restoration. Ezekiel's vision of the Valley of Dry Bones conveyed a powerful message of hope amid the darkest of circumstances. It reassured the exiled Israelites that, despite their current state of desolation and despair, God had not abandoned them. He would breathe new life into them and restore their nation. This vision also foreshadowed a future messianic hope, pointing to the work of the Messiah, who would bring ultimate restoration and spiritual renewal to God's people. The dry bones coming to life served as a vivid metaphor for the resurrection and transformation that would occur through the redemptive work of the Messiah. Ezekiel's role as a watchman. Throughout his prophetic ministry, Ezekiel acted as a watchman for the house of Israel. He faithfully delivered God's messages, whether they were messages of judgment, lamentation, or hope. His role was not to determine the response of the people but to faithfully convey God's words. Ezekiel's commitment to his prophetic calling serves as a model for all who are called to proclaim God's message. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, God can bring forth life from what appears to be lifelessness. It underscores the enduring nature of God's love, grace, and redemptive power. Conclusion. The Valley of Dry Bones today. The vision of the Valley of Dry Bones, experienced by Ezekiel in the midst of exile, continues to resonate with readers and believers today. It is a timeless reminder that God is the ultimate source of life and restoration, capable of bringing hope to the most hopeless of situations. As we contemplate the profound imagery of dry bones coming to life, we are encouraged to seek God's transformative power in our own lives and communities. We are reminded that, like Ezekiel, we are called to be watchmen who faithfully convey God's messages of judgment, lamentation, and hope.